Don't. You gotta get up. Get up, buddy. You gotta run. It's just a flesh wound. Come on, get up. No, don't drop your sword. You need that, right? Keep glowing, keep glowing, keep glowing. No, you're supposed to keep glowing. No. Oh. Hey everybody, this is CandyThePuppy, and I'm here with a really quick critique video, one on Songs of War Episode 6, Thalleous' Death. And this is me just putting out there that my belief is that Thalleous shouldn't have actually died, and here's why. I'm going to go ahead and start off with the 3 flaws I found in Thalleous' death, and then afterwards go to how it either could have been changed, and then also how it could have been made better as well. That I believe that Thalleous and Darius took on the mentor role a little bit too suddenly, simply dying because that's usually what mentors do in order to encourage their students to move further. And while this does work for several stories like Star Wars, I believe that it doesn't exactly work for this particular character, Thalleous himself, mainly because he himself is a character who is worth delving into and finding flaws and bringing him along a character development kind of like thing, like giving him his own character development, time for growth. Because even though he's really old, doesn't mean that he's learned everything. And usually the case with mentors is that they know everything pretty much, and it seemed like that was there for Thalleous, was that he seemed to know too much, therefore he was dangerous as a character. However, looking at the actual story elements of it, I believe that there is a way that Thalleous could have continued without having been either overpowered, super smart, and not even that big of a burden to the story itself. In fact, it probably would have benefited the overall story. So yeah, in short for that, Thalleous is a bit too much of a large character to simply be put in the role of the mentor. I guess the second problem that I have for Thalleous' death is that simply because I felt like it didn't really have a meaning. Like usually whenever a mentor dies, it's either to drive their student forwards in some way, or maybe to like give them some meaning or some kind of lesson or just something like that. But with this story, it seemed kind of pointless, mostly just because, here, let's look over at Sen. Sen is somebody who already wants to fight, he already wants to go on adventures, he already wants to do all of the stuff that you would probably want the hero to do. And so that means that for Thalleous to have died simply to inspire Sen to go on to the adventure seems a little bit out of place and even pointless. Because Sen was already ready and intrigued and, excited and about exploring and all that stuff, and he probably would have eagerly decided to do that. Unless if, Thalleous would have just been the block between Sen and adventure, which at that point could make sense. However, Thalleous was definitely way more open than Osivian, who was the actual block for his hero's journey, which is what I believe it is. So Sen's influence and his final push to actually get into the story, it probably wasn't even Thalleous' death. It was simply the burning of the village. That would have been plenty, and it most likely was plenty to get him rolling, to get him out there and into the adventure. Thalleous' death just seemed like a little, and this happened too. Like you have the village burning, everything you've known and loved and everything. Oh, and also this guy dies too. It kind of just seems a little pointless, if you know what I mean. So, in short, Thalleous' death, I believe, just didn't have that sense of meaning that most movies do. The third one is more of just something I kind of wish would have been added in there, which is symbolism. You know, something very basic, but also helps bring the story along much better. Like, for instance, the one that I was really hoping would be in there would be Thalleous being killed by his own sword. One, just because that action amplifies the villain and his desire for revenge, and by killing his own foe, but with his own sword, with his foe's sword. I just believe little things like that, because if Thalleous' death was a bit later on, then there would have been more chance for things like that to happen, where things that kind of just mean more to the overall story, like small things, even just the small things like what weapon he was killed with. Because the spear, like, that was just the doer of the impact, of like the impact it had on the actual episode itself. It wasn't the, like kind of what all the tension is around. It was just an average spear. But if it was Thalleous' own sword, then that would have had a lot larger impact on the audience, on the other characters, and pretty much just overall, it would have been a lot more impactful. And I was just thinking that, like, with Thalleous' own sword, I just was like, I guess it isn't considered symbolism, but it could have been like a symbol in a way. I guess what I mean for that is that if Tigran was the one who had killed Thalleous with Thalleous' own sword, then I just believe that in itself would have a much larger impact than simply a spear. Because it's more than just a weapon, in that case at least. To Sen, it's much more than a weapon. It's a lesson, and it's a message pretty much to Sen, the next hero. And for that lesson to be Thalleous' own sword, it'd almost be like telling Sen to be careful what you use, what you have around you, like who you have around you. Just all that kind of little tiny things, but would really help out the overall story a lot. I've already stated the three flaws in the plot involving Thalleous' death. There are also some things that do not have to do with the story itself, but equally influence it, that have to do with his death, such as merchandise and memes. You see, with Songs of War, Thalleous is almost seen as the mascot of the series. People usually identify Songs of War by Thalleous or by those who look a lot like Thalleous. Furthermore, his memes and other jokes involving him are used in both merchandise and main just attractions towards the series itself. So, simply the fact that Thalleous as a character is no longer in the series almost makes those pieces of merchandise and those memes almost completely irrelevant, because now people are no longer having to root for that character in the series, and it just doesn't have the backup for it anymore with their main character behind the memes there anymore, which could come to many different consequences depending on the fan base itself. Now, I have a feeling that what's going to happen is that lots of these memes and attention is going to be turned instead to Igneous, which it is possible that could work, because Igneous is a pretty funny character. However, he doesn't have the same groundwork that Thalleous had. Thalleous was the one that you get to know his voice right away. You understand immediately that he is a main character and that he is important and that people should follow this guy and be on his side. With Igneous, he's a funny guy who likes reading books. That it doesn't really have any big relevant thing that people can be like, oh, this is something that represents Songs of War. this is something that I should get behind and that I should buy merch for and that I should care about. Whereas Thalleous was a lot like that because he was pretty much telling everybody the story of the world. He was introducing them. He was the one just the main character. Everyone saw him as the main character. Whereas Igneous, he's been introduced as a side character. And while in the end it might turn out that Igneous is perfect for memes and stuff and like all the merchandise and all that kind of stuff, I just feel like it will not work as well as Thalleous, or at least not in the way that Thalleous was. And with his influence slowly dying with his character's death, I fear as if things might not go as well as people have been hoping. And finally, we have how this could have been so much better. I'm just kidding. This is just how I personally believe that the story could have gone a lot farther in just like a bit of a deeper way than how it has gone so far. I feel as if the overall plot for Songs of War could be benefited using Thalleous would be to add a foil between him and Tigran Voltaris. And what I mean by foil is to simply just exploit some similarity between the two. Now, I kind of came up with two different kinds of kind of like emotional, kind of like some mental blockage that Thalleous would be having to go through in order to actually complete his character arc. And one of them, which is the one I don't exactly prefer, but it is possible, is that he realizes whenever in that fight with like the village burning and everything, he realizes that he is actually afraid of the Voltaris, which is why I was thinking it'd be unlikely because he's been fighting them for so long. But it is possible that they could have said something like how he's been searching for them and fighting them, but that's never really explained as to why. And then the reason could be that he's secretly terrified of them, and that the only reason he's hunting them down is so that he will basically facing his fears, his version of facing his fears. But the whole problem is that they're still his fears. He's terrified of these things he's been searching for his entire life. And while that might not have much character development thing to it, it was something interesting I thought that might be probable in at least adding some kind of color to the Songs of War thing, even though Songs of War is very colorful. Have you seen the lighting? It's so beautiful. Wow. The second and a lot more realistic attempt at this would be actually more foil. The other one was more of just, oh, what if? This one's more of a foil between Tigran and Thalleous, and pretty much just the sides that each of them represent. And what I'm saying is that you could easily fix the villain in a way as well, Tigran, because he's so dead set on revenge. It's almost weird. Like, you're confused. You're like, why are you so dead set on revenge? Like all this kind of stuff, but you're just like, why? So, I was thinking with Thalleous, if he, in a way, had the exact same flaw where really his moral goals lied simply in revenge, then that would show a completely different side of the whole revenge idea. In that, even heroes struggle with the idea of that they need their revenge. And Thalleous wouldn't be as absurd about it as Tigran, not at all. But I'm just saying that if Thalleous was struggling with revenge, like maybe say there was a good Voltaris at some point, and this good Voltaris was really nice, they proved themselves to be worthy of being trusted, but Thalleous was dead set on his revenge kind of ways, and his stern belief that all Voltaris are evil because of whatever they did, like a directly to him or those he loved, then that would be in a way revenge showing itself just in another way. And that in itself would be an interesting thing to look at from Thalleus's point of view, being that whenever he realizes that he himself is struggling with the idea of needing revenge on the Voltaris for what they have done, for the Great War, even though, which is why you would probably need to have at least one good Voltaris just to show that this revenge thing is, it's real. It isn't just, oh, they are all evil, so this makes sense. If some of them were good, then that would be able to point out Thalleus's personal flaw right then and there, just by him, generalizing the entire Voltaris clan, just like the Voltaris are generalizing all the other clans as their enemies. So, just kind of thought that an interesting turn would be for Thalleous to figure out that he himself is having trouble with like the idea of needing revenge, simply because they were the ones who started the Great War or all this kind of stuff, and and it makes sense because he's really old too, and well, probably not for their kind, but he's still reasonably old, so he's lived a long time, and so for him to get over that would be a big step for him and a very big character arc, simply to just realize how he's similar to Tigran in the way of having a big revenge problem, even if he hides it really well at first. And again, I'm just saying that a good foil, if not those two, even if it was the randomest of foils, if there was a good foil between Tigran and Thalleous, that would make the whole series a lot better, simply because you have that similarity and that kind of thing you can see between these two characters who seem so different at first. If you make something similar between them, like both of them, their desire for revenge was my thing, was if you had something like that, then that could really help just the overall story. All of this off, I believe that with some basic story beats changed, Thalleous could have survived episode 6. He could have simply shrunk a little as main character, but enough to keep him and his foil interesting and important to the story. Thalleous' survival could have really gone somewhere, if not for his sake, then for the villain's sake. Piggy! Reduction right here, repeat noise reduction right here. Having fun singing while editing this audio. Repeat noise reduction right here, repeat noise reduction right here. Just press effect and then press noise reduction and repeat that noise reduction. Okay, I'm done.